Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Awakened Mother Show. I'm Reverend Wendy Silvers, and it is my joy and my honor to be here with you. On the Awakened Mother Show, we tap into wellness, spirituality, and motherhood and all the different forms of mothering, whether you're a birth mother, you're mothering a project, you are teaching about the archetype of mothering, because we are here to evolve. We are here to raise up our consciousness and evolve. And so on the Awakened Mother Show, I bring guests on that are willing to talk about controversial issues, to push the envelope, to bring new information so that you can be empowered, educated, and evolve beyond any sense of limitation. And today, I am excited to share with you a wonderful person that I discovered in my research, which you'll hear the topic. I was doing research, and I wanted to learn more about this particular issue, and I found Lindsie and her podcast. And excuse me, Lindsie Vizethan she spent 20 years in the traditional healthcare system as a nurse, being trained to treat symptoms rather than the roots with quick fixes and band-aid solutions. She followed the system, checked every box, and believed she understood health until she became the patient herself. And after receiving her own diagnosis, she realized how much was missing from the conventional model. Should I do this? Like,
Yes.
her healing journey didn't start with another prescription. It started with a wake up call. What if this isn't all there is? Lindsie is the host of the podcast PCOS Unfiltered, author of the book Healing Beyond the Diagnosis, and now helps women move beyond a diagnosis by teaching them how to understand the messages beyond their symptoms, especially those who've been dismissed, frustrated, or told, just live with it. Her powerful 90-day coaching program focuses on mindful eating, nervous system reset, hormone balance, and sustainable habit change. And she wrote the book, Healing Beyond the Diagnosis: Rewrite Your PCOS Story to Finally Reclaim Your Health. And I will make sure that in the liner notes, you know exactly how to reach her. And I think you will really enjoy our dialogue. So pull up a chair, you get some tea, or if you're having coffee or your water, get your journal, and we're going to just dive into some conversation about this topic that seems to be a really like there's so many women that have PCOS, and it's like one of the largest diagnoses. And so you spent years in traditional healthcare before transitioning into this work. What did you start noticing about women with PCOS that made you realize something was missing in the conventional approach?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for having me. So happy to be here. Um, so I was in the ER, so kind of a different beast. But at the same time, I mean, I left it because I just didn't feel like I was helping people anymore.
Mm.
So again, in the ER, it's a lot of kind of quick fixes. We make sure there's nothing life-threatening. But I would see a lot of women with PCOS coming in, struggling. You could tell even just struggling, on a day-to-day basis. But I think the doctors just didn't know what to do. They didn't really know exactly. Sure, we ruled out, to make sure they didn't have an ovarian cyst that burst and they weren't, didn't have a big infection, or they weren't, bleeding for any, like, nothing crazy like that. But still, I think they just didn't know what to do. And then we would see some of them repeatedly, and
Mm.
then they would also get dismissed, there. And now, after talking to so many other women that have had this diagnosis, it just becomes more clear that I think the presentation of symptoms a lot of the
Hmm.
times
Hmm.
um, can make the difference because I think whether it's the ER or your primary care, your gynecologist that you're going to, I think it presents in so many different ways that it gets missed. Or they say, you don't even need cysts on your ovaries really technically anymore, but they might do some blood work and that might be still normal range, but for somebody living in that body and now something's changed,
Yeah.
you're trying to say, no, something's going on here. But I think unfortunately in our traditional healthcare system, it's to no fault of their own. They look at that normal range or, okay, you're living with this, you're fine. So we'll just keep an eye on it until it gets worse. And it's very unfortunate, but I think the fault kind of comes with just how we're trained in traditional healthcare. And I think, PCOS, along with other conditions, probably have not been studied as much and have not been taught in medical school as much. I think that might be changing. We're starting to see that there needs to be more research in some of these conditions like PCOS.
I love that I
Yeah.
love that. I mean, I would love to hear more about how you kind of deduced it was PCOS. And I'm thinking about when I was a young girl, I was in my, God, maybe my early 20s. Maybe it was like 26, I think, something. And I like passed out in the shower or something, and I told a coworker, and I went to this gynecologist, and I don't even remember him. I think I blocked it out. And he said to me, "Oh, we're going to have to do a D&C and all this." And I was terrified. I didn't even know what was going on. And so I
Mm,
told another coworker, and they're like, "Go see my gynecologist." And I love this woman. I don't even know if she's alive anymore, Dr. Jean Chin. And Jean called the guy on the phone. Maybe I was younger than 26. And she said to this doctor on the phone, "Where are you getting your information? Where are
mm,
you basing, you gave her an exam and you're recommending a D&C and cauterization? Like
yeah.
she's 20 something. What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And I'm sure that doctor wasn't meaning to be off base, but can you imagine like 23,
Oh
24,
yeah.
you're getting a D&C and a cauterization,
That's
of your
yeah.
uterus, because I had that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it like looking back, so I was never diagnosed with PCOS. I was diagnosed with autoimmune conditions. But there's a few reasons I chose this specialty, and one being I just felt very called to
Hmm.
these women because of what I saw in the ER. And
Right.
also because I think when you do the research, you realize how prevalent it is and you realize how many cases are being missed, and just what women with PCOS are struggling with. I mean, looking back, I definitely could have probably been diagnosed and I had my own, I went like almost a year without a period and
Wow.
nobody really, and they were like, oh, well, you don't really necessarily need to have a period. Like you're fine. And even before that, I was having a period like every 2 weeks. I was on birth control at a very young age to regulate my periods, so there was like always something. And then of course, looking back, I missed all the messages that my my body was sending me in my, probably late 20s, early 30s, and also knowing what I had going on in my life at the time, high stress, bad relationship, job, all the things. And I ignored those for the longest time. And so I'm like, at some point, did I maybe even have a sign of this that could have been missed? I don't know. But
It's
there's definitely,
fascinating.
yeah,
It's fascinating
yeah.
because so many, even our young women today, and I mean, you're younger than me, and but there's still not a lot of conversation. My daughter's very like very I would say, informed. She does her research, and which is always so impressive to me because she's
Hmm.
really young. She's 25. But I think it's so important that you're doing this because I literally went for an exam. And I have to say, I went to a doctor very highly respected, and I'm just learning some stuff about hormones that this doctor missed. But I'm going to get to my point. So he does like an ultrasound, and he tells me that I have a fibroid,
Mm.
right? A big fibroid. And I'm like, do I need to do anything? He's like, no. And he puts me on estrogen without progesterone that I've been on for like over a year.
Hmm.
And fibroids are estrogen dominant. And I'm like, and then but the weirdest thing, I didn't know all that in that moment, but the funniest, weirdest thing is this man said to me, here, he took the ultrasound, he gave me a picture, like, when women are pregnant.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he literally, I'm like, he's like, here, do you want this? And I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
so I was like, that's so bizarre. And he's like, oh no, don't you, there's nothing you need to do. And don't worry about PCOS. It's like
Yeah,
the largest,
yeah.
the biggest diagnosis, and it's curable and all. So I love that what I heard you say in our first conversation that we ever had, and even now, is that you went beyond the diagnosis.
Hmm.
So can you speak to that?
Yeah, yeah. So when I got diagnosed, so like I said, I was diagnosed with it was probably very early lupus, and what we
Mm,
now know was celiac as well. But I ignored the symptoms. I mean, looking back even years, like I thought you were supposed to eat and just feel like awful. Like just
mm,
I would feel sluggish, my stomach would be kind of bloated, just not feeling very, very good. There were things with my skin going on. This was again like probably early 30s. And then so it was 2020 actually. I think COVID was my tipping point, the high point of stress. Because when
yeah.
I left nursing, I had a gym. We had the gym was closed, and had no idea what was going on in the world with the business. And I was having joint pain in my hands, and it was just an indescribable type pain. And then the final thing was, well, I shouldn't even say that. Maybe it wasn't, it was a wake-up call, but we were eating pizza, my husband and I with some friends, and I was like eating like my second piece of pizza, and I had the worst stomach pain. My stomach, I looked like I was probably 6 months pregnant. Like I had no idea what was going on. I looked at him and I'm like, well, we gotta go. Like something is wrong. But I still like kind of ignored it. I at that point I was like, okay, I think this might be gluten. I think this might be a gluten thing. And I ended up cutting it out because my husband was traveling the following week. I was like, this is perfect. He's gone. I don't have to worry about, anything for him. I'm just gonna cut it out. And I felt so good after like a day. Finally, come August, I decided I needed to see somebody. And I made the choice to not do the traditional healthcare route because I think of all the stuff that I've seen,
Mhm.
and I had this feeling like if I went to like a GI doctor, they'd probably put me on Pepcid for heartburn or something. I knew that was not going to be, I knew like in my heart.
Tums.
Yeah. So I saw a functional medicine practitioner who dove into my gut health, which was a big wake up call for me, and also nutrition because I always thought I ate like healthy. I never had a weight problem really. But looking back at my pictures, my face was puffy. Like, and I didn't really realize it. But so yeah, I had to really completely change my way of thinking about my
Hmm.
health and, food as medicine and not as,
Yes.
as a reward.
Right.
Um, yeah. And stress, that was
Hmm.
another big thing because again, owning and running a business, high stress, I wasn't taking care of myself. And looking back to my nursing days, same thing. I'm working 12-hour shifts. I'm picking up extra shifts. I'm not sleeping well, all the things. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, it was a longer process, of course, going the natural route, but I knew that, going in, and I knew that would be better for me.
Mhm.
And eventually, yes, my joint pain went away. And I've had, I'm so much more in tune with my body. Like if something just feels off, I'm like, okay, what did I eat? What's going on? Am I, more stressed right now? Um, but I think no matter what condition it is, I think you can heal. You can, and there might be different degrees of that. It doesn't mean the symptoms are going to go away completely. But I think, talking about traditional healthcare, like if that's the route people want to go, that's fine. But I think there's so many other things that could go along with that to help somebody feel better. I don't think symptoms and conditions should just be managed.
Mhm.
I think there's so much more that we can do, and I think people can heal, can
I
move
love
beyond a diagnosis. Yeah.
I love that they're
Mhm.
not just they're not just healing you're not just healing the symptom, you're healing the
Mhm.
cause. And you're so
Yeah.
the perfect person to be helping people with this issue because you have seen the medical model.
Mhm.
And this is functional medicine or integrative uh, caregivers are so helpful because they do look at the whole body instead of treating a symptom, because a symptom is just that. It's a symptom of
Mhm.
something larger.
Yeah.
I was at an autism conference this weekend, and there was a lot of conversations about gut damage and gut impairment, I should say.
Mhm.
And there's a woman named Dr. Sabine Hazan, I think is the proper pronunciation, and she talked a lot about your gut health. And I love this conversation about health and wellness because I have an autoimmune issue, and I also had issues when I was in my late teens and early 20s. Like I call it moon time. I started my moon time when I was a gymnast and a figure skater. I started
Oh.
my moon time when I was 15 and a half, and then I did not have my moon time again until I was 17.
Mm.
And no one, I mean, that's a whole nother story. But, but I had I had chronic fatigue. I had systemic candida. I was like exhausted. So I
Mhm.
started in my 20s. I also had other issues, but I really appreciate where you're coming from because,
Mhm.
so many times the response from the medical protocol is a pill
Yeah.
or a
Mhm.
procedure
Yes.
rather than what you're talking about, which is let's back this up. Let's look
Yeah.
at what you're eating. How are you living? Are you sleeping?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yep.
know? So,
Yeah, there's so much more to it. I mean, we're so specialized with our healthcare system that they're not looking at the whole picture, and they're not talking to the other specialists either to try to look at the whole picture, unfortunately. So,
what about the woman who feels like she's doing everything right and still not seeing results? Like, what do you think the biggest piece that's
uh,
missing or
well,
they're missing?
you're catching me at the right time because I just got back from Costa Rica, and um it was a wellness retreat, yoga retreat, but it's something I talk about on my podcast so much and that I've integrated with my clients, and that's the nervous system. And I think that, people get pulled in every which direction. They see ads, they see reels, they see, TikToks from all kinds of influencers, do this diet, eat this way, exercise more, exercise less, you should strength train, you should take this supplement, and that like almost stresses you out even more, especially when you're just desperate to
Yeah.
feel better,
Hmm.
and so I think cut out the noise, maybe do some inner work and really decide what's my body need. I mean, I even interviewed somebody recently, and it was not PCOS, but she got to a point where she was on so many medications and she was taking them for side effects for the other medications. And she finally said, I'm stopping everything. Like I need to actually listen to my body, yeah, right. And see what I actually need to be doing and taking. So I think for those women that feel like they're doing everything right, in the sense of maybe, probably trying another diet or trying another supplement, just stop. Just stop and listen. And the nervous system is playing probably such a huge role in the healing process. I start my clients off with just some deep breaths. It's, a couple times a day can do amazing things for the body. And going back to Costa Rica, I learned that myself on another level. So it just, yeah, gave me more knowledge and solidified what I guess already kind of knew. But I would say yes, like focus on your nervous system first, because you can't heal when your body doesn't feel safe. If it's in that fight or flight response all the time and it's stressed out, your body doesn't prioritize what it actually needs to do to heal, to lose
Mhm.
weight, or whatever else you want it to do to feel better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like eating something and getting no nutritive value because your system is hijacked by
Yes.
anxiety.
Yes, for
So,
sure. Hmm.
so your work focuses a lot on mindful eating and understanding hunger because so many people don't even know when they're hungry.
Yeah.
So how do emotional needs and past experiences show up in the way women eat, especially with PCOS?
Oh, yeah, this is a good one. Yeah, I mean, I talk about different hungers in my program. Sometimes when we're hungry, we could just be thirsty. Sometimes your blood sugar could be low. Sometimes you need variety. Sometimes you are actually physically hungry. A lot of the other times in between there, there's probably that emotional type hunger where, you just had a stressful moment, you had a bad day, you maybe had some, kids are in bed, husband's asleep, whatever, or maybe you're sitting on the couch with your husband and you go to that pint of ice cream, right? And that even kind of plays a role too, because think about it, some of the programming that we're given, throughout our
Hmm.
lifetime, like when you see a woman that's bawling her eyes out, sitting on the floor, the refrigerator doors open or freezer doors open, and she's eating a pint of ice cream, like you probably associate that with a bad breakup or a bad day or, something. And so that almost like kind of starts like putting it, in your mind that, oh, it's okay to do that. When I feel bad, then I'll just, have a pint of ice cream. Um, there's also so many in today's world, I think so many past traumas. I mean, you can speak to this, of course, more, but traumas, just childhood experiences. Again, the more I talk to women, all these little things, like just these comments. I mean, I can even think back to comments that were made, that my mom made about me eating cereal. Like, I would sometimes have cereal after dinner. And she like made a comment about, well, I'm not going to stay skinny forever, doing that. Like just those little things can make such a difference. And if you're
Oh,
not, processing those traumas, those ideas, properly, it can show up in so many, different ways. And this can even be, generational. We were talking about the gut health, that can sometimes go back to your grandmother. That kind of gets passed down with births, with your microbiome health. And it can even be the traumas can get passed down, from generation to generation as well. And sometimes we carry that, for a while. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's very true. And I really appreciate what you're saying about that whole, first of all, of course, trauma does get, stuck in your body, and that whole idea of soothing yourself through food.
Hmm.
It's such a reflex, especially for people that are uncomfortable when they're around people who are having their feelings and they
Hmm.
want have a pizza, have a let's go out for a good meal. Well, that,
Yeah.
and it's like, but what really would help that person is if you just sat there and witnessed them
Yeah.
in their
Yeah.
pain.
Yeah.
So I would imagine you don't support eating in front of the TV or eating while you're driving.
Yes, yes, for sure. Yeah, and it's something that, especially coming back from Costa Rica, I think I'm so much more aware of now too, because there'll be times like if my husband is gone, for example, because he travels for work, and I'll turn on the TV and have my dinner in front of the TV, and I'm really, really starting to realize now how much more present I need to be, and I preach it. I don't do it all the
Yeah.
time. I do it sometimes, but yes, it's true. I really think because we're so stimulated all the time. Even if a device isn't on, that can still be projecting something, some form of stimulation. I mean, whether you're watching, even if it's a show that you're enjoying, that's still providing some form of stimulation, and you're not actually processing what you're eating, not tasting what you're eating,
Abs-
feeling it in your mouth, smelling it,
yeah.
all those things that aid with digestion. And then before you know it, you ate this whole plate of food when you maybe weren't even that hungry for everything on your plate. So
It's so
yes, yes, I,
true.
I would say be present. I also talk going back to the deep breaths. A lot of the times I tell my clients, do your deep breaths around food as well. Like take like a minute
Mm,
before you even dive in, to
mm-hmm,
take some deep breaths. And then that way
mm-hmm,
too, you're a little more calmer. And then you
mm-hmm.
can also, that kind of starts that process of digestion and calming the nervous system so you can actually get the nutrients you need from that meal.
And don't wear stretch pants. Wear pants that zip up and have buttons or snaps.
Yes.
So you're conscious because that unconscious eating, it's so true. You just forget. You're just eating and eating
Yeah.
as a form of entertainment. And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden you're like, wait, I just ate like 5 times my amount. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
So in your book, Healing the Diagnosis, what's one concept? I know we've talked a lot, like you've shared
Mhm.
such wealth of information. Is there one concept or shift that you feel has the power to completely change how women approach their healing journey?
Oh, yes. Yeah, this is something I say probably all the time. And I think it's that they should know they're not limited by that diagnosis. Just because you're given that diagnosis, that doesn't mean it's a prison sentence, and that's towards the end of the book, I talk about that as well to kind of start summing it up. But unfortunately, when a doctor does give you a diagnosis, and whether that's PCOS, or a lot of other things, they don't usually say that it's curable. They usually
Right.
say it's manageable, it's going to be a lifelong condition. And I think that sets women up for failure, when they hear that. And
Mm,
so I think, yeah, the biggest thing is knowing that you are not stuck. You don't have to be stuck with that diagnosis, just because somebody in a white coat tells you that this is how it's going to be. You're not limited by it, and you can truly move beyond it. Yeah.
it's wonderful. So wonderful because it can be really heavy.
Yeah.
So, as we bring this conversation, because I'm sure we'll have more to a close, is there anything else you would like to share with our listening audience?
Ooh.
Is
Oh my
there
gosh. I
like
feel like, go ahead. I
we've
feel
covered a
like,
lot of
yeah,
ground?
I know. I feel like I covered all
Yeah,
my
yeah,
usual main,
yeah. Where do
talking
people
points.
start? Is there a starting place? Is there um, people could go to your site or go to where would they go first? Buy your book? What would you recommend?
Yeah. I would say probably my podcast, and my book, but my podcast, you're also going to get a lot more, just a lot of things. I mean, and I will say it's my podcast has even evolved. Some
Yeah.
episodes aren't always super PCOS specific, but going back
Hmm.
to that mindset piece, they're usually there for that reason, you know. So I've had a few
Hmm.
guys on that have had their healing journeys, and their mindset was just so powerful around how they, you know, how they healed and everything that they did on their journey.
Hmm.
So you'll definitely get to know me more on my podcast. And then yes, of course, my book too, because that's going to give you a great starting point. So I keep it pretty general. You're going to get some background on PCOS, insulin resistance. A lot of the times fuels PCOS, so you're going to get some knowledge on that. But then also those things, you're going to learn about the different hungers. You're going to learn about the nervous system and stress, sleep, movement, of course, you know, basic nutrition. My one big thing with nutrition is adding before subtracting, because a lot of the times when we
What does that
are
mean?
yeah, right. When we are hungry, um, or I should say having like cravings, sometimes it's just a lack of nutrients. Like we need to
Mm.
flood our body with some nutrients. We get, again, so stressed when we start a diet or program that we think we have to remove everything. And so I tell my clients actually to add things in before we start removing. So adding protein, adding some veggies, adding in some fruit, and continue eating the way you've been eating. Because then eventually your body's going to realize, oh, this is what I need. This is what's good for me. This is what's going to help me heal. And then it's going to naturally kind of start self-eliminating the sugars and the additives and all those things that it realizes like aren't, you know, aren't as good. So I talk about that in my book as well. I talk about advocating for yourself because that's a huge thing as well with, you know, when the doctor hands you the diagnosis and says, okay, you need to go on this medication now or whatever it is, do the research. You know,
Hmm.
there is still plenty of stuff out there. Do the research so you can ask the right questions when you have that, you know, maybe 10-15 minute window with your doctor so you can take control of your, you know, your own health.
Mm.
And maybe if that doctor doesn't like what you have to say, then maybe that's not the right one for you. But you know,
Right.
um,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's.
so there's some other things in there, but that's kind of
And can
most.
people work with you one on one?
Yes, yep. I do have one-on-one and group coaching programs as well. So yeah, you're gonna link everything, you know, for that. But
Yeah.
you can find me on Instagram, healthy_ever after 15. Facebook is just my first and last name. I'm on there. I started a newsletter on Substack, and I'm LinkedIn as well. So yeah.
Well, thank you. Today I don't know if you know about this, but in DC right now, there's a vote that's going to be before the House to give pesticide companies
Mhm.
immunity. It's in the Farm Bill, and it's called I know, right? It's called the liability shield. So
Mhm.
this conversation is
Mhm.
so topical and close to my heart because we don't want the pesticide companies to have
Mhm.
immunity,
Yeah,
because part of what I believe the work that you do helps people to clear their microbiome, and the
yeah,
pesticide companies are what contribute to it happening. And well,
yeah.
I'm loosely putting that together, right? But if you spray all the crops with glyphosate and paraquat and all of these
Yeah.
terrible pesticides that end up in water and breast milk
And our foods and
and
yeah,
our
yeah.
foods.
I
So
mean,
I,
yeah. They have to have full protective gear on to spray the crops with it. And then sometimes, I mean, I've even heard like with McDonald's French fries, for example, in the potato fields, they can't even go in the fields for like a week after they spray the crops. Yes.
ah,
Because it's like so toxic. And then that's what's going into our bodies and changing our DNA, you know, changing, I mean, like changing all these, changing how our body operates, not DNA, but like, but
Yeah, no,
changing,
cellular structure.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for me, yes, like I said, I can't have gluten now, but I do think, like, looking back, knowing what I was eating, and because I was always on the go, I was eating lot more packaged foods and
Hmm.
fast foods that I still thought were like on the healthier side, but they were, I'm sure they were heavily sprayed along with just other additives of some sort too.
And it's so wonderful that you do the work you do
Hmm.
because I don't, and especially like there's a lot of moms that listen to this, and it's it's tough because you've got to get if you work or if it depends on how what area of mothering, what season you're in, but you get up and you get your kids ready to go
Hmm.
and you make their lunch or you give them money for lunch and you want your kids to be getting healthy food and you think you're giving them healthy food but you don't
Yeah.
realize, oh my God, this was sprayed within an inch of its life. I did not know that about McDonald's. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that with me. And
Yeah.
so thank you for doing the
Mm.
work that you do to help people regain their health and to
Mhm.
learn what they can do to support sustaining their health.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for this conversation.